Iran, the rise and development of terrorist infrastructure, anti-Semitism, and Israel advocacy dominated the Sixth Christian Media Summit in Jerusalem as journalists, activists, and people of faith came from around the world to partake in the first in-person conference since COVID-19. Israel Defense Forces International spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hecht, who gave the attendees an overview of security issues, told the media line that the Israeli-Palestinian issue is volatile.
So there's a massive influx in violence, mainly in Jenin and Nablus, mainly because the Palestinian Authority right now isn't enforcing their authority there, which is basically still working in other places. We were giving them warning to try and handle these terrorists. These are ungoverned spaces. We call them hornets' nests of Islamic jihad, and there were attacks coming out into Israel's home front, and we had to go in and act.
When asked about the recent announcement by the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East of the discovery of a terror tunnel under an UNRWA school in Gaza, Hecht said,
They're all over, and it's something we are very, very concerned about. It's a vast amount in the tens, and it's a complex infrastructure underground with a lot of capabilities, and it's something that we'll have to deal with at some point.
Israeli experts warned of Iran's determination to achieve nuclear capabilities and expressed a shared admiration for the Iranian people who were taking to the streets to protest the draconian religious laws that govern life, especially for women. The panelists were not the only ones with a message of support for the protesters.
There are courageous people in Iran and outside of Iran truly calling for change. And so I never think that we can approach these situations fatalistically. Right now, these courageous young women who are taking off the hijabs and standing up, we have to believe that we really could see a sea change in Iran.
Stearns was far less supportive of former U.S. President Donald Trump.
I don't pretend to speak on behalf of the evangelical world, but I'll say the reaction from this evangelical is that the former president, President Trump, needs to issue an absolutely strong, unequivocal repudiation of the viewpoints that are apparently a part of Kanye and some of the other guests who were there. This was a huge mistake on his part, and I hope that he rectifies it.
We've seen a really historic change, I think, in relations between the Jewish people and Christian evangelicals, and I think that's a reflection here at this summit, the 6th annual, but in many other ways too, a growing understanding between Jews and Christians about the mutual threats we face and about Christians needing to know that they need to stand with the Jewish people, as it says in the book of Esther, for such a time as this.
How is Christian media different than secular media? I think many people who are watching sometimes see that there's a difference. They don't always understand the difference. Is it just about faith?
It's a lot about faith, and I think one thing that we can do as Christian media is that we have the Bible to look through a lens of what's happening in the world today. We can come from a biblical perspective, and so I think that adds a richness that the secular media doesn't have. And I think that's an advantage that we have to interpret the signs. It says I believe in Chronicles that the sons of Issachar, they understood the times and they knew what Israel should do. And I think that's something that we at CBN News like to do, and I hope other media like to do, really interpret, understand the times so we know what's happening. And I think you can only do that fully through a biblical lens.
There's a change in terms of young people. I know that many sectors of religion are really coping with this issue. It's not just Jews, it's also the Christian community in terms of the understanding of Israel, the Middle East. So how do you speak to a younger generation?
That's a great question, because I think the younger generation really, they get a lot of bombarded with messages in all sorts of platforms and ways, far more than whenever I was a young person. And so I think to get through that barrage of information, and sometimes mis or disinformation, is really key to be able to reach them on their own platforms, whether it's TikTok or Facebook or YouTube, is to present what's happening here in a platform and in a way that they can understand.
Leading venture capitalist Jonathan Medved, the founder and CEO of multi-million-dollar equity crowdfunding platform Our Crowd, stressed the importance of Israeli technology, which he said is the future of the country.
Here, last year, $25 billion invested in Israeli venture-backed companies. Now, that's a lot of money for a small little country.
Medved also highlighted the positive impact of the 2020 Abraham Accords between Israel and the UAE and Bahrain on the sector. He further recounted details of his recent trip to Saudi Arabia, whose connection to Israel, he said, is now out in the open.
You might have heard there's something called the Abraham Accords, which, in my opinion, when you look at this region, has been the most underhyped story there is. I think shame on the mainstream media. I know that this kind of media covers it. You can't help but see biblical prophecy and the biblical story about Abraham's children getting back together again.
The conference was organized by Israel's government press office.
It gave us a good opportunity to share views and to dealing with the challenges that Israel is facing, particularly BDS, particularly Iran problems, etc., and to get to know the Israeli society much better.
Chen also acknowledged that varying Christian denominations were among the participants.
We have also a Christian world that's coming from the Catholic perspective, not just evangelical. So we need to persuade them that we are right, not all the time, most of the time, and we need their support in any topics, not necessarily just the conflict. We've got lots of other issues in terms of the contact that connected both of the communities.
But for six-time summit attendee Dorothy Spalding, the president and founder of Watchman Broadcasting, a Christian television channel in Georgia, the summit is an Israeli experience.
I like to show people at home all about Israel. I like to show the good things they're doing, all the little bits and pieces that we learn that we can take back to our studios, mine in South Carolina, and get the people excited about the things of Israel. I just like people to know how great Israel is.
From Jerusalem, this is Felice Friedson reporting for the Media Line.